Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining our September solution session. I know I had a couple people reach out about the August session. We didn't have an August session, so don't panic if you can't find it online or you think you missed it. Unfortunately, we did have to cancel it. As you all may know, if you've joined us previously, Heather Kutzman has been hosting these webinars. She has decided to go elsewhere with her career. So I am now going to take full reign of this session each month. My name's Whitney Rogers. Here it says I'm the Custom Solutions Success Manager. I actually just transitioned into the Training and Education as well as Technical Support Manager. So you'll see my name a lot more when it comes to any training or webinars. So I'm excited to be here, excited to have you guys here. So we'll jump right into today's topics. So just an overview of today, we're going to review the Bend tool, as well as our Pinterest to price examples, and some new designs that we have within CounterSketch, and we'll have a little time at the end if there's any questions. Today, we're going to start off talking about bend. So bend is a control that allows you to manipulate design elements so that they can conform to the overall shape of the part that you're joining them with, or perhaps to fit them into different openings. So if you have maybe a split shank, you're trying to set some scroll work into that split. Maybe you're just trying to create a freehand shank and you want to bend the piece around the ring rail. You can utilize the bend tool for that. So the bend tool is only accessible with freehand parts. So if you're navigating into your freehand library, you'll only see it within those parts. It's not available for any parts that have a gemstone present. That's because if we start bending around those parts with the gemstone, you're obviously going to distort that gem shape, and it's not going to be a set piece. So that option will not be available for any of those pieces. To activate your bin tool, you're going to select you'll have your part selected with your gumball, and you're going to select that blue sphere you see here, or blue square, sorry, you see here on my screen. So that's going to activate the bin tool. So first click on that blue box or square is going to activate the bin tool. Here, you're going to see that you have a spine point. So this is what we define as the spine, this line that kind of comes all the way through this fish here. This is going to be your start point. So that's saying that you want to bend this piece from this starting point. And then this small yellow sphere is going to be your end point. So purple sphere, start point, yellow end point. And that's going to control the bend. To change the bend direction or the overall bend itself, you're going to use this orange larger sphere. And don't worry, I'm going to give a demo of this. I just have some picture representations that I wanted to walk through as well. So when you're using the bend tool, here in this first example, I'm looking at the side profile. So that's going to allow me, if I was to grab this, bend it up and down, you'll see that I'm bending the side profile. Bend is all about the direction in which you are looking at the piece. So for example, here you see I have the top-down view, and that's allowing me to bend that piece in a different direction. I could also go to a front view to the fish's front of its face as well. So keep that in mind as you're moving around this tool and manipulating pieces, that how you're viewing the piece matters. So you want to change your viewpoint depending on how you are trying to curve this piece. Next, with the bend tool, you have a few different options on how you are bending. So we have the symmetrical bend, which is going to be the default or the first option that is presented to you. You're saying whatever I do on this side, I also want to do it on the opposite side. That's a good tool to use if you are, for my example of bending around a ring rail, you're trying to create a shank. Maybe you're trying to bend something around a bezel. You're trying to kind of create a decorative piece. That is a great tool to use, is that symmetrical bend for those. Next, you have the opposite bend. So you're saying I want one side to bend in the opposite direction of the other. So we'll use that tool a little bit more today with our Pinterest to price examples. You also have the option to just utilize a one-sided bend. So I just want to bend that tail of my fish. I can select that one-sided bend just to bend that tail. One thing to note is that it's not going to allow you to make multiple different bends. So if I was like trying to bend the tail, but also just kind of bend one portion of the front, it's going to allow you to choose one option, and you'll have to manipulate it as best you can. We know with CounterSketch, not everything's perfect, and that's okay. That's why we have our CAD/CAM team here to validate and kind of perfect those things. But if I did a tail bend, but then also wanted to do a different bend up here to the head, it's not going to allow me to do two separate bends. So just keep that in mind as you're utilizing the tool. I'll jump right into CounterSketch now just to give a little demo of this. So here we have our freehand tile. Going into freehand, I'm just going to grab a little fish here. So here I have my fish open in my customization screen. I am going to, let's go to the side view here. So my gumball's present. I can scale this fish if I would like, make it bigger, larger, make it thicker using my disc, or maneuver it through my space using my arrows as well as my rotation arrows. To activate that bin tool, I have that blue box here. I'm going to left click. That's going to activate my bend. And then going into perspective, as I change my viewpoint, you'll notice that my spine and my grid are moving. This is indicating that I'm bending from a different direction. So here, let's go back to that side view. I can left click and pull my spine out wider. I can make it shorter. I can move my start point. Holding that orange sphere, I can bend. And then if I wanted to bend, maybe not the whole fish, maybe I just wanted to do a one-sided bend or just bend that tail. I've moved my spine start point and end point. I'm doing a one-sided bend, and I just want to bend the tail. Then rotating around, let's go to the front view. So here, when I bend, you'll notice that it's bending in a different direction. So it's all about your viewpoint. Go here. All right, so a quick overview of bins. We'll put it to work in our Pinterest to price example. So I'm going to go ahead and go to the menu and select New Session. And the first example we want to start with today is kind of this just contemporary pendant design. We're going to utilize bins as well as the duplicate tool. It's asking me if I'd like to create a portfolio. I'm just going to select No to start my new session. So here, my pendant is made fully out of freehand pieces. I'm going to go into my freehand library. I'm going to left click on my wire, rope, and knots. And I'm just going to grab this plain wire here at the top. This is a great piece to utilize. I use it a lot when designing to kind of create shapes. For pieces, if I'm kind of trying to create a floral or a flower looking design, which I'll have kind of in the next example, this is also a great piece to utilize if you're trying to give a customer a visual representation of an earring. You can make this look like a post. We won't cast the post like that for you. You'll have to go to stellar.com and pick a post from our inventory, and we'll assemble it for you. But sometimes if the customer just really needs a visual, or you're trying to create an earring design, you can utilize this part to kind of create a post on the back to give an overall view or a render for your customer. It allows you to change the profile and multiple things about it. So I like to use it a lot. I'm going to turn my grid on just so I have an idea of the overall scale. I'm going to navigate to my top-down view since I'm creating a pendant. It's just going to help me to keep everything aligned and design a little bit easier and more efficiently. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm just going to move it slightly off center. I know that I want it to be quite a bit longer than it is. So coming over to my design stack, I'm going to adjust my length. I'm going to left click and drag all the way across. I'm also going to select my options menu and select expand control range. This is going to allow me to extend that slider so that I can make this part even larger. Let's go up to 15. If you're trying to adjust the slider, kind of getting to a specific millimeter size, you can just click on the slider by left clicking. If you're kind of sliding it back and forth, you can't quite get it where you want it, just click on the bar. It's going to move it down in an increment of 1 so that you can get to that desired dimension. I'm going to make it a little bit wider. Let's go to about 1 millimeter. And I think I'm going to leave the profile as is. So now what I want to do is I want to activate my bin tool. So here I have that blue box. I'm going to left click. And you'll notice that my spine is coming across. Well, I want it to go long ways, so north-south. So I'm going to grab, kind of zoom in, grab that small yellow sphere to adjust my spine, and extend it along the length of my wire here. I don't want to do a symmetrical bend. I actually want to do an opposite so that I kind of get that S shape or curvature. So I'm going to left click and select that opposite bend. Now, selecting my orange sphere, it's going to allow me to bend. You'll notice that as I bend as well, it's increasing my scale. So the bend option does allow you to increase the scale or scale your piece. So keep that in mind as you are designing. I've got a good curve there. So now I'm going to click that box again. And here my polar array option is up, but I don't want that. So I'm going to click it one more time because I want to be able to rotate this piece now into position. So now I have my gumball, it's not turned on. I'm just going to left click it one more time, and I'm now going to be able to utilize my rotation arrows. So for this, I'm just going to pull it around so that I have a nice curvature here. Remember, if you wanted to go in even increments, you can hold down the shift key while you're rotating, and that's going to give you 45-degree increments as you rotate. So for this piece, I'm going to leave it as is now, and I'm just going to create the other side. I'm going to go back into my freehand menu and grab that same exact piece of wire. Moving it slightly off center, I'm going to again use my design stack to just extend the length, select my options, and expand control range. And let's bring this one to right around 12. I also want to bring the width up so that it's the same as the other side. And I'm now going to do the same thing and activate that bend tool. I'm going to adjust my spine as well as my direction of my bend here. Sometimes if it's difficult to see this little yellow sphere, just try kind of zooming in to grab it. Sometimes if you're zoomed too far out, they're kind of small and they're difficult to grab. I'm going to do my opposite bend, and this time I kind of want to go in the opposite direction. So I'm going to bend it out, kind of scaling it up just slightly. And I'm going to click back through so that I can rotate this side. Just rotate it a little bit more. I'm going to position it here. There we go. So now I have kind of the overall shape of the pendant. I now want to go in and just add some bezel set stones to kind of embellish this contemporary design. So I'm going to go into my freehand, select a setting, and I'm just looking for a plain bezel. So scrolling through, especially when you're in freehand in the settings, it's difficult to see what the design looks like. So always be sure to utilize your different viewpoints because that's going to give you a better idea of what the detail on that piece has, especially in the settings, like everything looks like a four-prong head from the top. So you want to go to that side or through finger view so that you can really see the detail of that piece. Here from the side view, this looks like a solid bezel. I'm just going to toggle back up just to make sure that it's all the way around, and it is. So I'm going to left click and select Start Designing. I'm going to utilize my design stack to adjust my stone size. So left clicking and dragging to the left. I'm just going to make them a little bit smaller. Then kind of coming into my perspective so that I can position my piece. So I'm just going to place this right along. It's very deep here, so I'm going to see if I can just pull that height down a bit so it's not too much larger than my wire. So just pulling it down till I'm happy with the position. I think I'm going to reduce the size a little bit more. There we go. Now, once I've created this, so I've made a few adjustments. I adjusted the size, I adjusted the height so that it fits well onto my wire there for my pendant. I don't want to make all those same adjustments again, so I'm just going to utilize what I've already adjusted and just duplicate the piece. So selecting the little options menu on the piece itself, these two pieces of, looks like two pieces of paper is the option to duplicate. Now I selected duplicate and it's here in my bottom of my screen in my freehand parts, but I don't see it. That's because it's always going to duplicate directly on top of the piece that's already there. So don't panic, it is there. I'm going to utilize the arrows and you'll see that I do have another piece. So positioning that piece, I already know that it's aligned and it's at the correct height. I don't have to go back and make any of those adjustments again. So duplicate is a very handy tool to use, especially when you're wanting to place similar pieces onto a part. I'm going to do it one more time, and we're just going to kind of come up, place it here so that those two parts are joined together nicely. And I'm just going to keep duplicating until I have all of the parts that I would like. I'm going to make a few a little bit larger. I'm just going to bump that up a bit. Since I made it larger, I just want to come down, rotate around, and make sure that I'm adjusting where that is laying on that wire. So let's see, let's put this one here. To zoom in, I just have a scroll wheel on my mouse. If you don't have a mouse with a scroll wheel, I definitely recommend you go out and buy yourself one. And that is greatly going to help you when you're designing within freehand. It's going to make it a lot easier to manipulate parts, zoom in and out utilizing that scroll wheel. I think I'm going to add one more small one here at the top. So all I'm doing to move these parts is just left clicking on these arrows. You'll notice they're highlighting a hot pink, and I'm just dragging them to the position that I would like. Let's also do one more here at the bottom. Now, if I wanted to create a slide so that this slides on a chain, I can go back into freehand, navigate to my bales, and just select this kind of half jump ring here. So I'm going to drop this into my customization screen. Let's just move it out the way so we can see it a little bit better. I'm going to hold down the Shift key on my keyboard because I want to rotate this to 90 degrees. And I'm going to go into perspective so I can also rotate it 90 degrees in the opposite direction. So now I have it facing up so that I can place it on the back of my piece. But I'm going to make a few adjustments to its overall size first. So let's come down to profile width. That's just going to make it a bit thinner for me, as well as the height. I don't need it to be as big as it is. And then the inside width and length are going to adjust this curvature in the center here. So it's going to adjust how much length I have as well as width. So I'm going to reduce it slightly. Let's left click and kind of drag that down. Now, utilizing my arrows, I'm going to come around and just position my piece. Since I have a curvature in the back of my wire here, I can just put it at a slight angle so that it doesn't show. And then coming across, I'm going to duplicate it so that I can place it on the other side as well. Since I've already made my changes, I don't want to go through and design it all over again. So just tucking that in there. Now I have the ability to put a chain on this piece and kind of make it like a chain slide. So once I've placed all my parts, I'm going to come up and just toggle my viewport controls. It's going to give me a better overall look of my piece to determine if my customer's happy with how it looks. I can also come in and adjust the metal colors. You'll notice that I went directly to secondary. That's because those freehand parts are always going to default to that secondary metal color. You can always come in and change it by selecting the part, coming to that options menu and toggling to primary metal. So you can switch parts between primary and secondary. They're just always going to default to secondary. So once I'm happy with my design, I can take a quick render and provide that to my customer. All right, so that was our first Pinterest to price example. We're going to go into another one here. Oh, excuse me. So the second one, we're going to do kind of a floral pendant design. We're going to still utilize that bend feature, and we're going to work heavily with polar array as well. So if I wanted to save this design, remember you can create your portfolios by just selecting this little plus sign and hitting the floppy disk to save it. If you're creating portfolios or you're designing things for your customers, I really recommend that you use your customer's name when creating that portfolio, and you can just simply click this save, and that's going to drop it directly into that portfolio. So if you ever need to go back and reference what you created previously for the customer, or they want to make a matching earring set for this piece, you could always come back, reopen it, and kind of manipulate it and create it into a different type of piece of jewelry. So going to my menu, I'm going to select New Session. Joseph has a question. It says, are any freehand shanks bendable? I don't believe that they are, and that is to keep the integrity of that shank. Now, if you want to create your own shank, so for example, you could go grab that piece of wire that I just used. Here, when I'm in my freehand library, I have this ring rail guide. So I can drop that into my screen, go grab that wire or maybe a floral element, and I can bend it around that ring rail to create my own custom shank. So I don't believe it's going to allow you to bend any of the shanks just to hold the integrity of it, but you can create your own. So Jerome also had a question. It said, would this model need a support from left to right, and would that be addressed at validation? So the support, I think would be okay, but I'm not a validator, but they would definitely address all of that in the validation step. So every file that you submit with CounterSketch goes to our validation team, and they are going to review every single part of your piece to make sure that it's going to go through production successfully. All right. So to get our other pendant created, so kind of a floral design, I'm going to start with just the center setting. I'm going to start with the center, that way I can just kind of work around and build my way out to create kind of this large statement pendant. I want to use kind of a fun design for the center, so I'm going to come in and use kind of this like basket weave pronged head. So I'm just going to place this in the center axis. I'm going to turn my grid on once again and go to that top-down view since I'm creating that flat pendant. Coming over to my size, I'm just going to reduce it slightly. Let's go to about 5.8. Remember, if you're using your customer stones, you can just type in the value. So if I can just click in here, I can type on my keyboard. If I know that we're using grandma's center stone or a family heirloom stone, you can always come in and just type in those dimensions in the height, width, and depth field, and your model is going to adjust for you. So you don't always have to use the slider. You do have the option to manually size it to your stone. So I have adjusted my size. That's all I want to do. I am now going to go right into freehand and select this wire, rope, and knot category once again. I'm looking at it from my through finger view, so I really don't have a good view of what any of these pieces are. So I'm going to toggle to that perspective. I have a much better viewpoint in order to select my piece. So here, I just kind of want to use one of these straight kind of wire designs, kind of a rope effect. The first thing I want to do is I am going to rotate it. I want an even 90-degree rotation, so holding my shift key once again, left clicking with my mouse and just dragging that to that 90-degree angle. I'm going to move it up slightly, quite long, so I'm going to come over to my length within my design stack and reduce the length. I'm going to bring it slightly off center because I'm also going to want to utilize the mirror tool to kind of create that petal effect. Let's reduce that even further. Using my perspective, kind of rotating around, make sure I have a good connection with my head. This kind of wire design has this curvature. I actually want that to lay flat down, so I'm just going to rotate again, holding shift and go to 90 degrees so that curve is facing down. Pull it down just slightly so it's right in the middle there, and then going back to my top down. So now I want to utilize bend once again, but I'm trying to create kind of a petal effect here. So what I want to do is I want to side mirror. I move that piece directly off of my center axis, And when I side mirror, I'm now going to be able to see very clearly as I'm bending when those 2 points meet where I want them to meet, kind of creating that effect. So turn that mirror on. Don't wait until after you do the bend, turn it on, turn it off. Like turn it on, then start to do your bends. That way you have a clear view and you're not having to go back and forth to adjust. So kind of grabbing this orange sphere here, I can bend it. It's scaling up a bit as well. So just adjusting my bend amount till I have that kind of petal shaped look that I'm wanting. I'm now going to kind of zoom in. My little box here was kind of in the way, and I want to make sure that I can click that box. So I zoom in, and I'm going to select the polar array tool now. So anytime you want to array, you're kind of looking for this asterisk or star-shaped symbol, and that is going to array my piece. Now my mirror is still turned on. I know that when I array this piece, I want it to go all the way around that center stone. So here I'm going to utilize my angle arrow. So you can see I have my angle here. It's at 180 degrees. To go all the way around, I'm going to drag it to 360. So coming around, you can see that my angle's increasing. When I drop it right on that 360 degrees, you'll see that I now have that same shape around my piece. Now I only have it 4 times and I want to increase that. So I want it to look more like a flower and not just have the 4 petals. So using my count arrow, I'm going to increase this to 6. So now I have it all the way around my piece arrayed just like I want it. So kind of working my way out, I'm now going to go grab the next part for my design. Coming into freehand, I'm going to left click on the shapes, and I'm looking for kind of this diamond shaped piece with a couple of accent stones in it. I actually think it might be on page 2. Yep. So now I want to place this like right in between my petals. So it's always going to drop your freehand part right in that center axis. Remember, you're going to have to move it out in order to see it. So since I have that large stone in the center, I can't see my part immediately. I know it's there because it's here in my little freehand library at the bottom. So I'm going to pull it straight up and use the arrows to kind of position it right in between these 2 petals. So rotating, I'm going to kind of use this blue arrow to center it as best I can between this little space. So just toggling, might move it up just slightly there. Come to that perspective to see how it's sitting. You can see it's sitting quite high. So remember to always toggle around to that perspective, because from the top, it looks great, but it might not be connecting from the side. Got my piece in position. I'm going to come in. It's not wanting me to select my box here, so let's see. Oh, looks like I am having a small issue. I'm going to rotate around and see if I go to a different angle, if I can select that. There we go. Now you'll notice when I selected it once, I went straight to polar array. That's because this part has those gemstones in it, so it's not going to allow me to bend that part. So using my polar array, I'm going to do the same exact thing and pull that angle all the way around to 360 degrees. I already know that I have 6 spaces because that's what I did that's what I increased my petals to. So I'm going to use that count bar and go straight up to 6, and that's going to place those in all of those spaces between my petals. Now I want to create another kind of larger petal that comes up in the center of these and goes over my accent that I just created. I could come in and duplicate this, but I want a little bit of a different bend. So I would have to duplicate it, unmirror, it's polar arrayed, and when you're duplicating a polar arrayed piece, as you position that and use those arrows to pull it through your space, it's going to throw that array kind of into a disarray, just because you're pulling it off of its center axis. So it's going to kind of get a little wonky and kind of array in a strange shape. So when you have an arrayed object, it's best to just go back into that freehand library and grab that part once again. So here, I'm going to come select my piece, select Start Designing, and begin to position my piece. So first thing I'm going to do is hold down that Shift, rotate it at 90 degrees. I'm going to pull it up here, and let's shorten that length once again. I do want it to be longer than the one that I already have, but I can also scale it when I am bending it. So kind of pulling it up, I again want to rotate this bend so that's facing down. So using my blue rotation, I'm going to face that down. To get it to bend how I would like, I'm just going to come through and rotate it just slightly. Now for this one, if I turn on that side bend, it's not going to work exactly how I utilized it the first time. So the first time it was okay because I was bending on the exact opposite sides of the center axis, so it worked out in my favor. For this round, I'm going to have to manipulate and play with it a little bit after I polar array, because when I do that side, it's going on the opposite side. It's not going to know that I want it to go down here so that I can see the bend here. So I'm going to turn that off for now. I'm going to utilize that mirror again after I array. So selecting my blue box, I've activated my bend tool. I'm going to come zoom in a little bit because I was kind of interfering with this gumball here. So now I'm going to kind of bend, and I'm going to have to kind of come through and manipulate this a little bit more. So going back to my gumball and directional arrows, I want it to fall kind of right in that center here. So rotating and kind of positioning. Also want to make sure that that's not hitting my center gemstone as well. So kind of coming in to see where it's ending. And it looks, let's rotate this out just slightly. Looks like we might be okay. So this looks okay. I think I'm going to have to bend it a little bit more, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and array it and then mirror the piece so that I can come back into that bend tool to get that effect that I'm wanting. So selecting my blue box once again, I'm going to go into polar array. We already know that we want it to go all the way around, so that 360 degrees. And I'm now going to activate my side mirror. It still looks a little bit funky. That's because I don't have the appropriate count. So remember, we've been utilizing that count at 6. So we know we have 6 petals. We have 6 of those accents with the gem. So once I increase this to 6, you can see that I'm now going to be able to meet, but I just need to bend slightly more and kind of reposition until I get these two parts to connect. So coming back in, I want to go right back to that bend tool. So I've selected, I'm in my gumball, select one more time to activate bend. So here, I'm going to kind of adjust and pull it till they meet. Now that I have my completed shape, I'm going to come in and add just another accent here. Then I want to add my full halo around this piece. So selecting my freehand library once again, actually just want to utilize that same bezel that I utilized in the beginning for the first example. So going to that through finger view so I have a better viewpoint of my parts, selecting that bezel head, and it's going to again drop it in my center axis. Since I want to place one right on top of here in this smaller petal, I can just move this straight up. Obviously very large, so I'm going to use my design stack and my slider to left click and drag until I get the desired size. So I'm going to position this, go right to my polar array tool, and bring it around. The polar array tool can save you a lot of time, and utilizing polar array and mirror together will really help you to create more efficiently. So you're saving yourself some time, you're saving your customer some time. So definitely make sure that you're playing around with the different tools and combining them. You know, you're using polar array, but you can also use mirror to get the effects that you're getting, and using them in combination just saves you so much time in having to duplicate pieces, try to reposition them to match the opposite side. So super important tools and great when used in combination together. My head is quite big here, so I am just going to adjust the height so it's not so large. Now I've got that in place. I could go back and add another kind of little rope effect here over this one, but I think I'm going to drop in my halo first. So here, coming to settings, now it's going to be difficult for me to see my halos with that through finger view, so I'm going to go into perspective so I have a better view of the halo options I have available. Here, I think I just want a very simple halo design, so I'm going to select this piece. Now I want to keep it on my center axis. So this whole time we've been designing around that center stone and that center axis. So I want to make sure that I don't move this halo. If I push it off that center axis, it's not going to align correctly around the edges of my piece. So just leaving it exactly where it is, I'm going to use the design stack to increase that inside length as well as that inside width. So left clicking, I'm just dragging my sliders. Now I've reached the end of my slider. Clearly we can see that my halo is not large enough, so I'm going to go into that options menu, select expand control range, and that's going to allow me to continue to increase the size of this piece. Now, just about every slider is going to allow you to extend the control range. That doesn't mean you should. So as you continue to extend control ranges, you might find that some pieces or models break, and that's because they're just not designed to be at those dimensions. So keep that in mind. If you go to a certain extent, you extend that slider a few times, and that piece kind of goes wonky. There's some like weird metal or your stones are out of place. That indicates that that model has broken at that dimension. So you're going to want to reduce that back down. Maybe you need to utilize a different model that has the dimensions that you're needing, or you can always reduce it down so that the model looks correct, and then you can add those dimensions or any of those changes in your additional design notes when you submit to CAD/CAM services. They're going to be able to make that change for you if the system doesn't allow you to. So here we're just increasing till we get to about the edges of that piece. Almost there. Just about. I'm going to get this one pretty close to that first one. Let's reduce it ever so slightly. All right, so now I'm going to rotate around. I might want to move this halo down slightly just to meet the rest of my parts. I think I'm actually going to make it a little bit thicker, so I'm going to adjust that profile height. So always remember to utilize the images on the left-hand side when you're adjusting. This is meant to be there as a helpful guide telling you what it's going to adjust. So that profile height, just make it a little bit more substantial, and I'm going to pull it down just a little bit more. So now pretty much got my overall pendant design that I was looking for. If I needed to come in and make any tweaks, I certainly can, but I'm going to go ahead and just get that bail added to the top of the piece. So here in my freehand parts, I'm going to come to my bails category. I'm first going to add just that kind of little half jump ring at the top. dragging it straight up. I'm going to go into perspective so that I can align it with my halo. Probably could have made my halo a little bit thicker as well, just to accommodate that jump ring there. I'm going to adjust my jump ring shape. I actually think I kind of like the square. So let's go with that. I can adjust my width and my length as well as my profile height. I'm going to bring the height down just so it fits better with the halo that I have right now. It's not perfect, but we can always go back and adjust later. So I've positioned my bail here. Let's see what the cushion looks like. Actually, yeah, let's go with the cushion. And now I'm going to go back and grab my bail. So I'm going to select that plus sign, come back, and I just want a really simplistic bail. So I think I'm just going to select this one here, just kind of elongated, very simple. My pendant has a lot of designs, so the bail can stay quite simple. So here, just pulling my bail up. I noticed that I don't have a design stack. That's because the parts that I've been using have been counterparts, so they have a prefix of CP. Counterparts will always have a design stack. That's going to allow you to make the modifications to your piece. My bail actually starts with a prefix you can see up here kind of in the left-hand corner. It starts with SP, and that stands for static part. So the static parts are going to have these combination of disc and arrows, and that's how you're going to manipulate the overall scale of your piece. So going to my top-down view, to kind of move this in my space, I'm just right-clicking and holding, and I can drag it around just to get a better view of what I'm trying to adjust. And I can hold that yellow disc to scale up or down. Going into perspective, I'm just going to make sure that it's sitting right in my jump ring there, and it looks good. So final touches, I can adjust my primary and secondary metal colors. All of these are freehand parts, so again, it's going to default to that secondary metal color. If I maybe wanted to make this two-tone, I wanted this halo to be in a different color, I can select that options menu on my freehand part and select that little toggle to swap it to the primary metal. So now you see I selected that as white gold, and so that is now my primary, or platinum, sorry. So that is now my primary metal color. So just a good way that you can utilize bend, mirror, as well as polar array to create your freehand pieces. Any questions about this piece or how I created this design? Let's hop back over here. So we've created our floral pendant. Now I just want to talk a little bit about the new style. So we've had quite a few new pieces go into the library. If you're with our streaming services, so if you're utilizing CounterSketch streaming, you got these new styles. If you're with our perpetual license, you will need to have an active CounterSketch membership. So if you don't see these styles, be sure to give us a call. We want you to renew your membership so that you can get access to any of our updates as well as our new library designs. Our CounterSketch membership has actually changed slightly. So if you have been a perpetual license holder for quite some time, you're probably used to paying $295 a year. That has changed. It is now $349 a year, but you get more with it. So now you're going to receive all of your updates. You're going to receive your new library designs. You're also going to get full access to our academy content. So our online academy, if you have streaming, you already have access to the academy. If you haven't used it, I recommend that you do. And that is just training, online training that you can learn at your own pace. You can also train everyone in your store. And I cannot stress enough how important that is. If you've only got one individual in your store that's trained on CounterSketch, if they decide to leave you and go elsewhere, then you have no trained associates and CounterSketch is going to fall by the wayside. So train your associates, as many as you can, get them engaged with the software. It's a great experience not only for them, but also for your customers. So just a little sneak peek, we have new Academy videos that posted. These are two of the new features. So if you haven't used our online academy, you're not sure how to get there, be sure to give us a call. You can shoot me an email. My email is my first name, Whitney_Rogers@stellar.com. You're welcome to email me if you need any help with anything or if you just have some questions. So make sure you check out our new online academy, or our new academy videos, I should say. We're going to start launching new content every Wednesday. So you can be on the lookout. You're going to have new videos that go on there every single Wednesday. You're also going to see changes on there as well as we're updating outdated content. So we're constantly in there adding new things and updating what is there so that it is current for your business. We're so happy you joined today. We do have other training opportunities. We have in-person training. We offer virtual training if you're more comfortable joining from your home or business. And as I just stated, we have our online academy. So if you're interested in having more people within your business trained, please take a look at stellar.com, or you can go to gemvision.com as well and view our training dates. We do only have one other virtual training scheduled for this year for CounterSketch, and that's going to take place in October. It's a 3-day virtual training where you'll join me and Lainey, who is our instructor here with Gemvision, and we'll walk step by step how you can utilize CounterSketch. So if you're interested in joining one of those trainings, the in-person and virtual, you can definitely contact one of our sales reps. A sneak peek into our next session. It's scheduled for October 14th at 9 a.m. Central Time. The link is at stellar.com/CSS webinars for you to register. We are going to deep dive into our render tool, and I'm going to talk about how you can use that tool to create custom marketing. The holidays are coming. You want customers to create these custom pieces utilizing the software. You can actually create your own marketing campaigns using that render tool. So super cool feature. I hope that you can all join us again next month on the 14th. You can go register now again at stellar.com/CSS webinars. If there are any questions, you can utilize the chat. You can type that to me. I'll be glad to answer. Again, if you have a question after the class, maybe want to learn more about the academy or training options for your store, you can definitely shoot me an email with those questions. I can get you over to the correct person or help you out. Again, I will put my email in the chat for you so you have access to it. And finally, these webinars are for you. So let us know what you think. There'll be a short survey afterwards on how the presentation was, if you enjoyed the content, if there's something you would like to see. So as we go, we'll pick different topics each month. But if there's something that you haven't seen, you really would love a refresher on, I'd love to hear what that is. I will definitely work it into future presentations. These, as I said, these are for you. They're here to help you and your business and your associates learn to effectively use this software. So definitely fill out that survey at the end and let us know. And finally, thanks for everyone for joining me for the past hour. I hope you have enjoyed the content, and I will look forward to seeing you again next time. I'm going to drop my email right here in the chat for you guys, just so you have reference. Thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.